Caiti.
Hi.
You're the founder of Jasper Paul PR, a company you started in 2017 in your apartment.
Correct.
I think your average growth rate has been around 25 to 30% a year. A team of 13 plus women, is that correct?
13 including myself. As an entrepreneur, when you have so many variables already in your business, like if it doesn't fall into this category, like we're not doing it. I mean, I think social media's changed the game. You can kind of operate as your own publicist a little bit in that regard. Like find journalists that are writing about your industry. They're probably on Twitter. They're probably on Instagram. Follow them, comment. It's all about relationship building.
Caiti,
Hi.
thank you for taking the time.
Of course. Excited to be here.
You're the founder of Jasper Paul PR, a company you started in 2017 in your apartment.
Correct.
And you've grown it. I think your average growth rate has been around 25 to 30% a year. A team of 13 plus women, is that correct?
13 including myself. So, yep. All women.
All women.
All women.
Which is fitting because you were named one of the most influential businesswomen in St. Louis in 2022. So would love to learn more about why it's all women on your team and how you grew the company, the way you've grown it. I think you're a phenomenal entrepreneur and folks can learn a lot from you. Not only about PR, but also about building a business.
Well, thank you, Raj. And it's fun to be here. And I mean, we're friends and it's actually today is our 7-year anniversary of Jasper Paul. So it feels fitting that we're doing this and talking about the company. I'm really proud of how it's grown and how we've built it. And, you know, looking back on the last 7 years, obviously was reflecting on it this morning and just really proud of what it is and how we work with the hospitality industry in St. Louis. And we're super specialized in what we do. So, you know, a lot of agencies will kind of work with a number of clients across industries, but we don't do that. All of our clients are within the hospitality industry. So restaurants, hotels, destinations, attractions, wine, beer, and spirit brands, kind of anything in that space. And being able to specialize in that industry, it's a very close-knit community. And it's just been cool to see that develop over the last 7 years in St. Louis and beyond.
One thing I didn't mention is that some of your clients are iconic brands in St. Louis, and some of your clients are also James Beard Award winners, nominees. I'm assuming you didn't start with clients like that. Maybe you did. But would you mind giving us some background on just how you started and maybe what your clients looked like in the beginning?
Sure. So I did actually get to start with with one or two really acclaimed clients, and that was really just an extension of my previous role in Chicago. So started my career in Chicago, worked there for about a decade before moving back to the St. Louis area. I'm from Alton, Illinois originally, across on this side of the river, but lived in Chicago, worked for a few agencies there, but one for the most of my time there, which was a company called Wagstaff Worldwide that is a hospitality-based public relations agency with offices in New York and San Francisco and LA primarily.
So if we can pause real quick, did you always want to be in PR?
No, I was a business marketing degree from University of Illinois. And I mean, that's broad some people went kind of a finance direction, someone corporate, you know, working for MasterCard, that kind of thing. I got a job with Macy's doing their buying and planning program. And this was in 2008. So we all know what happened in 2008. So I got fired before I started. Spring break of senior year, I thought I had a job lined up, and I got an email that said, we're closing. It was going to be in St. Louis too. So Macy's had a corporate office here in St. Louis. And they said, the St. Louis office is not going to exist. You can either move to Miami or San Francisco, or we'll give you a $1,500 stipend and, you know, go start your process over again. spring break was a week later. I was like, you know what? I'll take $1,500 and I was feeling torn of like staying in St. Louis and going to Chicago anyway, so I kind of took that as a sign to move to Chicago. So fell into a small agency role there as my first job, and yeah, that's kind of started my PR career. But public relations people either have kind of a journalist background or marketing, so I kind of went the marketing route, but public relations as a degree didn't exist when I was, and now I think it's evolved in a big way. So, but yeah, that was my kind of path to get started in it.
So it sounds like you were in a way lucky that you landed with a company that I think you really enjoyed working for. And my understanding is they were kind of supportive in you eventually going off on your own as well.
Yeah.
When did you know that you wanted to go off on your own, and why?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to move home to St. Louis. I was in my late 20s, and all my friends were moving to the suburbs of Chicago and starting families, and I was still single, and just wasn't feeling the same passion to live in Chicago, and so moved home, and they allowed me to keep my job, and I worked remotely as an independent contractor, though. This is, again, pre-pandemic, pre-remote working being the norm.
You're a pioneer.
Yeah. So so it was just to even be able to like continue having that role was unheard of. But since I was an independent contractor, I'm setting my own hours, I'm doing my own taxes, I'm, doing all the kind of fundamentals of running your own business. And I started just getting approached by people in St. Louis that were wanting marketing and PR support. And I like completely respect Wagstaff for saying this, but St. Louis wasn't a market that was going to be like an office for them. That was my goal. Do I, move here and then eventually open an office and kind of have a small team here? Didn't make sense for their business model. Totally get it. But in saying no, that was kind of the writing on the wall that if I was going to continue to grow, I was going to need to start something on my own. And when I finally decided to do that, which was within a year of that decision, Mary Wagstaff, who's the founder, said, we're going to support Caiti in doing this. So, and my boss in Chicago at the time, he also was really advocating for me to be able to do this because he was a friend and, knew this is what would make me happy. So I really credit the two of them for allowing me to get to start Jasper Paul. And at that point, I had 3 or 4 clients in St. Louis already. And they said, we're going to transition these accounts to you. So what that looked like was for the first year of the company, those clients, were mine, but I still had support from the other agency, but also had to share the revenue that was coming in from those clients with them over a year period. So a lot of times when, people leave agencies and start off on their own, they take a bunch of clients with them, and I just didn't want to burn that bridge. And I'm glad we did it that way. And I'm still proud of, they've just been acquired, and like, awesome to see how successful they've all been. But yeah, I wanted to do it right, and was able to start the company with 3 or 4 St. Louis-based clients who luckily supported me in starting my own thing. And 2 of the 4 are still clients today. So
wow, so 7 years later. That's amazing. Shout out to Mary for helping you out. I hope she's listening and appreciates that. When you decided you wanted to be back in St. Louis, being someone that grew up in St. Louis and moved to Chicago and came back, someone listening to this who's not familiar with St. Louis may say, why would you go back to St. Louis when you were in Chicago? Can you expand on maybe what you like about St. Louis? You grew up here. What drew you back, really?
I think that I always kind of thought I would end up back here. I I saw an article one time of somebody that was interviewed, and this happens a lot even within the hospitality industry, where chefs will go and work in New York and other markets, and then come back here and do something really cool in St. Louis, which makes our food scene so unique. And that's been kind of a recent thing, but you know, I saw an article one time that was like the arch. Everybody has a secret magnet in their body that the arch just slowly like pulls them. But I'm from Alton, which is across the river. So I was coming to St. Louis to go to a Cardinals game or go to the zoo as a kid. I mean, I was essentially a tourist. I wasn't living in St. Louis and understanding like the nuances of the neighborhoods and all the things that make St. Louis great. St. Louis is very much a city of neighborhoods. And I think in moving back here, I was able to see that St. Louis has like so many great little communities, and each is different and has their own spirit. And I kind of got to explore that moving back, and I didn't know that before moving back here. So yeah, it was a big shift for me from moving from Chicago. But I've always said I felt more connected to the St. Louis hospitality community within a year than I did 7 or 8 years living in Chicago. It's just very supportive. Everybody wants to. We know that if you're helping out somebody, that's going to come back around to you, and that's kind of how I've operated the business too. We're not a restaurant, but we're working directly with these people. Like we have to adapt the same kind of culture of working together, being collaborative, doing things that are going to benefit the greater community. And it's been cool to see that develop over the last few years.
I appreciate you sharing that. I would agree. I think the business community in St. Louis is extremely supportive, especially compared to like larger markets where it may be more of a sharky environment. So I'm glad to hear that in the hospitality world as well, because I have no involvement in the hospitality world except for eating at some of these establishments and enjoying them. When I think of PR, I think of what I think you guys might refer to as like crisis management. And I'm not necessarily thinking of, or I wasn't until we met, thinking of PR for companies like that don't need it due to some circumstance.
Right.
So is that pretty typical in the hospitality world where folks are working with a PR firm? And can you expand on what public relations really are for a business?
Sure. I mean, it is not a silly question. I mean, what is PR is something that I think if you ask anybody that's a publicist, they're like, no one understands what I do. I think for the first 10 years of my career, my parents thought like any article that, a client was in that like I wrote that. And I'm like, I did. I'm not like actually writing it, but the kind of base core service that we offer is media relations. So essentially what we're doing is we are pitching journalists, TV reporters, producers, radio hosts, writers, bloggers to write stories about our clients. So that can be everything from Sauce Magazine doing, 8 fish sandwiches to try for Lenten fish season to, the chef that has a really interesting background and is sourcing heirloom corn from, a small farm in Illinois and, the changing world of sustainability in food. It can, that storytelling piece is a big part of it, but, the media relations is we're kind of getting our clients' story out there for the public, and it can take time. It's not an overnight thing. Like, media relations, you can, if you have something big to announce, of course, a new opening or a huge expansion or something, like, of course that's going to get press, but the little nuanced stories take time to develop, and sometimes we'll pitch something and we'll hear back 2 years later from a journalist. But we're working with journalists locally, regionally, and nationally to tell our clients' stories. But that's evolved. So it used to be that's all we would do, but now I would consider that one spoke in the wheel. So for some clients, we're developing newsletters. For other clients, we're managing their social media. local collaborations and charity partnerships and things like that are a part of it that can kind of drive that new news and media relations. So what we do, we say public relations, but it does encompass those other things. So that's why we say PR and marketing, because we do touch on those other marketing areas, depending on like what the client's needs are.
So a client of yours doesn't need a PR firm and a marketing firm, correct? They can.
It depends. Some do.
Okay.
You know, some bigger brands will kind of have their creative agency that does all the brand. We don't do branding and things like that. So there's elements that I would consider falling under the marketing umbrella that we don't do. And I'm pretty transparent with people. Like if they say, you know, we need, you know, to book 30 private events in the next 6 months, there are certain things we can help with. Sure, we can have a digital social campaign, we can do digital ads, but you may need to hire a salesperson that's making cold calls to companies to book that kind of stuff, you know? So I'm pretty transparent with people if I think that like there's some other avenue that they should be exploring that's a better fit for what their marketing needs are.
Do you think that transparency helps you in the long run, just with developing your reputation?
Of course, yeah. I don't want to spend anybody's money. I don't want anybody to, you know, not feel like they get an ROI out of our service. All that does is burn a bridge for us. So, you know, and sometimes we try stuff and it doesn't. We think it's going to work and kill it, and it doesn't. But I think if we go into things with everybody understanding, like we're putting our best foot forward and we're pretty confident that this is going to, you know, move the needle for your company, those are the types of people that we're going to be working with.
Because a lot of the work you do too, it's not like, you know, we're going to pay X amount and we're going to get Y. A lot of it is just variable and experimental, right? Just based on what you think might work or what the client thinks might work, and you just have to wait and see if it works, right?
Right. I mean, I think if any PR firm is saying, hey, you're going to be in Forbes in the next 3 weeks, like, run. Like, that, to me, that is an overpromise and something they can not guarantee, especially in today's world. Like, the media landscape has changed a lot, especially on the national level. You know, AI is coming into play. Editorial teams are shrinking. There's not as, you know, there used to be 20 people on the editorial staff at a certain publication, and now there's maybe 6. Like, so it's just the expectation of a journalist is they're churning out more, and people aren't consuming things the same way. They're not. You know, people used to physically pick up a magazine and read a magazine. They're watching 8-second reels on Instagram now. Long format is coming back a little bit, but in different way. You know, people are listening to podcasts. So just like adapting what and how we're securing that same kind of storytelling and the goals of the clients. It just might be a different avenue that we're exploring.
It's funny that you mentioned the 8-second reels. I feel like for this podcast, the shorter the reel, the more traction it gets. So maybe we'll go for 8 seconds with your episode.
8 seconds and loop it. That's apparently the trick. Yeah.
So with your focus in hospitality and you being transparent and, you know, kind of developing the reputation that you've developed, I think, and I could be wrong here, don't want to speak for you, but I think you've been controlling your growth. You probably could have grown a lot quicker if you focused in absolutely anything and everything instead of just hospitality, because you want to give clients a certain level of quality. You want it to live up to your standard, the Jasper Paul standard. So can you kind of give us some background on what Jasper Paul means to you? Like, where did the name come from and why that hospitality focus?
Yeah. So the name is for my 2 grandfathers. So one was what I consider kind of the unintentional foodie. That was Jasper Jim Caro. My grandpa, he was a dentist, but he just described every experience, you know, by whatever he ate, or, you know, like our Caro family parties. My dad's one of 9. So I grew up with 32 cousins on that side of the family. Like, you know, we had these huge parties and food was always at the center of it. And loved a good martini, you know, just like that. I can now look back on that and realize how like pivotal that was in my life. Of course, like as a kid, I'm not necessarily clocking that, but now that this is the focus of my career, like how instrumental that was. And same on the other side of the family, but in a different way. And that was my grandpa Paul, who's my mom's father, and he was a farmer. So I have one of the photos that kind of guided my brand deck was my sister and I picking tomatoes with my grandpa. So our logo is a leaf, and that's actually the leaf of a tomato plant. So that's kind of like what I think of like, just when I think of the root of the passion that I have for the hospitality industry, it all kind of goes back to that. And then I studied abroad in Spain and like just was exposed to, so many different cultures and living in Europe, and just so jealous, that you can like pop over, take a couple hour train ride and experience a whole other culture and cuisine in Europe. So but we have elements of that in the States, I guess, but just fell in love with food and everything that surrounds it even more. And I'm a home cook too. And just being inquisitive about that. Just, I think in my first job, we kind of repped everybody. So I had a Halloween costume shop client. I had a divorce lawyer, and then I had a few restaurants and hotels. And like, those were the clients I was really excelling in because of that intrigue. Like I would just ask really good questions, not because I was trying to, it's just like I was generally interested in things. So then those were the clients that I did really well on. And then when I got a job at Wagstaff, I obviously focused on it. So just have kind of honed those skills over the years. And when I started Jasper Paul, I mean, it's at that point what I did and what I knew and what I loved. So there was like no question that I didn't want to. And I had come from an agency that repped everyone, and that like, you just can't be a specialist in anything, trying to shift your brain from pitching a divorce lawyer to then a hotel is like a very different skill set. So
yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So being able to specialize, it allows us to focus, and, everyone on my team has a similar love of hospitality, but in different ways. I mean, one of my senior leaders was a former pastry chef. Another was she was a GM at a restaurant for years. And so we all have kind of some, and for others, it's just kind of that like love since childhood, but everybody has just a general curiosity. I mean, that's one of our core values is, stay curious about our clients, like just always being excited and wanting to learn more about our industry is really important. And we all go into it with that kind of growth mindset of we don't know everything, and there's so much to learn, and things are changing, and it being along for the ride of that is fun.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I think it's a great story, but the parallels between what you do and what we do are only obvious to me now after you mention that, because like we're hyper focused on one thing, and for an outsider it might not look like that. Just like for an outsider that doesn't know about necessarily PR or hospitality, it might not look like you're hyper focused on that one thing. And I really think, if you want to be the best at that one thing, you have to focus on only that one thing and not get distracted. So like for us, it's we have layer upon layer upon layer. So it's like we focus on apartment communities that are market rate, that are 90s or newer, that are in the St. Louis region, that are mom and pop owned or third party managed, and like, so on and so forth. So aside from St. Louis and hospitality, do you have any other layers in terms of the types of clients you look to work with?
Yeah, I mean, EO's taught me a lot of that, of just like defining what is our ideal customer, and what are things that we'll compromise on, and things that we won't. But I think that's evolved. We just started working with our first cannabis client. Like now, in my opinion, that is considered part of hospitality. So things are changing and evolving. But yeah, I kind of say currently it's with any client here to Kansas City, Like we have a senior member of our team that lives in Kansas City, so we're definitely starting to explore that market a lot more. But there's so many cool little communities in between, whether it's Springfield, Missouri to kind of like lakeside destinations throughout Missouri. But I think like long-term plan, I could see us having maybe smaller satellite offices in those markets, or what I would consider third, fourth tier city markets. So, of course, we've got St. Louis and Kansas City, but you've got these cool communities in like Tulsa, Oklahoma, or, Fayetteville, Arkansas, or Bentonville. I mean, Arkansas is huge right now just because with Walmart headquartered there, there's all these like really cool restaurants and hotels that have popped up in that community. So, so I like future vision could see it evolving that way. But as far as hospitality goes, like there's like some wiggle room for me of like what that's defined as. But I agree to like, as an entrepreneur, when you have so many variables already in your business, like when you can be as specialized as you are, like, I mean, that's why I admire you too. Like being able to be like, if it doesn't fall into this category, like we're not doing it. And we've made some mistakes along the way of things that we've said, oh, let's try it. And it's just not our core business. Like we excel in the clients that we can speak their language, like for us, we're in a service-based industry. So it's like, we need to be able to ask the right questions and know to say, hey, how many turns of the restaurant is going to, produce the revenue that you need to, impact your bottom line, or what's hiring, everybody's having hiring issues in the industry. Like, here's what we're seeing across the industry of what people are doing to combat that. Like, if we can't speak to that stuff, then what are we doing?
On that topic of the hiring issues, I know COVID was very challenging for hospitality, not only for hiring, but also just in terms of regulations. Can you be open? Can you not be open? I would love to hear Jasper Paul's experience with COVID and your clients. But one quick thing before that. I misspoke and I said St. Louis, and you corrected me in like a super classy PR way. And you slipped in Kansas City when you were giving me the answer. I don't even know if you picked up on it or not.
Well, I don't think people like think of us as beyond St. Louis, and like it's not. I mean, it's like something we're like starting to dabble in. So it's not even like that market is fully developed. But I love Kansas City. My husband's from there, so like. I think there's a lot of synergies in both of our markets, and the work that we do here, there's opportunities for an agency like that there. So yeah, it's still a baby idea. So you're not wrong of saying it. So
well, I appreciate the correction either way, and you slipping it in there. Yeah. But going back to the COVID issue, and it was a big issue for the hospitality world. How did you navigate that? How did it impact your clients? Like, what were some of your takeaways from that experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was terrible. I remember do you remember, like, everything shut down on, like, a Friday. It was like they started canceling NCAA basketball games.
Yeah, in Canada. So I think...
Were you here?
I was in Canada at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember it was right before March break.
Yeah.
And they were saying, like, I think March break's going to be extended for, like, another week or something like that. Yeah. And then everything's going to be fine.
Yeah. Well, I was supposed to get married that summer, and I remember... March, and I remember having a conversation with the client, like, I hope it's okay by June. And he's like, it better be okay by June. And little do we know it wasn't. But yeah, I knew pretty quickly, like, oh no, like this is going to be bad. And if everything shut down, like what is going to happen? And so I mean, I can picture where I was, like sitting on the edge of my bed, just calling every single client and being like, what can we do to help you? And like, I mean, everybody was just panicked. But to see how people adapted and responded, and I just had this conversation with one of my teammates last night. Like, we went to a restaurant yesterday for lunch. full dining room now and a full rack of to-go orders that people have placed online. I'm like, that part of their business did not exist before COVID. Like, yes, that took so much for people to figure out how to do online ordering and pickup and all of that. But like now a lot of these restaurants have 2 revenue streams coming in on any day of service because they were able to adapt. But I think from our client perspective, again, we rep everything from big brands to small independent restaurants. And something I'll never forget, but Adam Tilford, he's the owner of Mission Taco Joint. Shout out to Adam. But I remember I called him just kind of panicked, and I was like, I was offering every client like pretty quickly half retainers. Cause I was like, I just need like at least half so I can not have to, let go of my staff.
So you knew to jump right into survival mode?
I did. I just knew it was going to be bad. And I didn't want to wait to the point that they were nervous to tell me they couldn't pay me anymore and have that be one more stressor on their plate. But I remember I called Adam and I said, what can we do? We can cut your retainer in half. And he said, Caiti, he was like, keep charging us what you're charging us. And he was like, give that reduction to somebody else that needs it. Like, what? I mean, that's like a testament of the hospitality industry. Like, he knew that we worked with smaller restaurants that like they were barely being able to afford what we charge anyway, let alone something like this. So again, we all support each other. Like, I'm so thankful that like the clients that we worked with through the pandemic, like, did find a way to keep paying us at least something, to keep going. And we adapted. And it's kind of like how our social media side of the business grew, because things were changing so quickly that clients needed help. Like, hey, we're launching this cool new special. Like, we work with Schlafly Beer, like within a matter of days, like they put together this special beer release called Sidework that benefited the hospitality industry. And like, we released the beer and it's picked up on like every local news station and, sells out, and just so many cool things like that where like hustle, and what can come out of that to like just build everybody up. And restaurants were still like giving away the house to benefit other people in need. Like we did like a drive-through, pay as you can, pay what you can drive-through of like different restaurants where people could drive through, pay what they want, and they could get a breakfast burrito from this place or breakfast sandwich from this place or whatever. And some people came through and were like, I have no money and I like haven't eaten in a week. We gave them a free breakfast burrito. The next car paid $50. Like, the St. Louis community is so philanthropic. Like, it's great. And my mom always said that, like, St. Louis gives back, and they really do. Like, it's so cool. Like, we incorporate charity partnerships a lot because people do like to see that, like, oh, there's this fun pizza on the menu, but the fact that then a portion of that goes back to a charity that they care about, like, just adds another level of kind of goodwill to things. But yeah, so we just, through those COVID times, it was like, how are people adapting? We were doing at-home kits and, cooking at home and takeout and fun partnerships and things like that, and made it through on the other side. And then it was, hard to hire people back, and there was a whole new set of issues once things kind of opened up again. But, it's kind of leveling off now. But and some things have gone back to how they were, and some things I don't think will ever go back to how they were.
So an interesting part of your answer there, you were entirely focused on your clients. Even like the hiring piece, I'm sure it wasn't easy on you with the way, kind of remote work changed things, and just the way we've seen some of our costs go up, as business owners and things like that. So what about for Jasper Paul? What were some of the challenges you faced aside from, trying to keep some clients and their retainers and things like that?
Yeah.
Did you have issues with hiring or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we were a team of 4 at that time, so thank goodness. Like, oh God, I can't even imagine. Knock on wood, it never happens again, because I can't imagine doing that now with a team of 12. But I didn't pay myself for 3 months. I mean, I was just so concerned about everyone else around me. And luckily my now husband at the time, like, I'm so glad I had his support and all of that. But I mean, I was depressed. Like, I definitely, like, it was very hard. Like, my life is around finding connection in these restaurants and things. And then that's just like taken away, overnight. And I know a lot of people in the hospitality industry struggled with it too. But for my team, I just wanted to like be able to keep supporting them. And then obviously like PPP money helped tremendously. And thank goodness that was an option, because it could have been a different story if that were the case. But the fact that it was 4 of us, I was able to navigate it. And we just all worked from home. And, Lauren, who's my, partner at the company still to this day, had a child in the middle. It's just like, it was hard, like personally and professionally. And I think we just did what we could to get by and be there to support I needed to be there to support my team and then clients. And then, maybe taking care of myself was the last thing that was a priority then, but we got through it.
Putting others first seems to be a big part of Caiti culture. So, how does that extend to your company culture? Is your company culture one where you're trying to build a team that is really playing for the team and with? I don't want to get canceled. I hope this doesn't get me canceled, but I'm sure it can't be easy having a team of all women. And if I just offended you, I apologize.
No, we're not a team of women. Just like, that is not a criteria. Okay. Like, that I'm only hiring women. It's just kind of worked out that way. I have had men that have worked for me in the past, but there's obviously sensitivities that come with that as a culture. But culture is very important to us. Like, we live by our core values. We talk about them daily. And I have very high expectations of myself, and I'm going to have those same expectations of my team. And I'm going to show up on a daily basis. So I expect them to show up on a daily basis, but that's exhausting. And some days are easier than others, and learning the balance, especially now that I have a family, of what that looks like continues to evolve. But yeah, I mean, taking care of my team and celebrating them is my number one priority, because I can't do this without them.
That's a great mentality to have, and very true. I think a lot of people forget that you need to have, the way a friend of mine put it, a deep and profound respect for the people that do the work.
For sure.
Especially if you're trying to work on the business, then there's other folks who are doing the actual work that needs to be done.
For sure.
You mentioned your family.
Yeah.
I have to ask how you balance being a parent and an entrepreneur. But if you were gonna speak on culture a little more,
no, I mean, balancing being a mom and an entrepreneur now is a whole different thing. And it's funny, my team that has seen pre-kids versus now for me are like, you are a completely different leader. Like, and to the point of like having a deep, profound respect for the people that do the majority of the work. I mean, I have to put that trust in the team now, because I have to be there for my family too. And I think I was probably a bit of a micromanager before kids. I just like couldn't let go of like very little things that like now I look back on, I'm like, what a waste of my time. But it's hard, once you're a baby, and that was my first baby. Jasper Paul is my first baby. And so now that I have kids, it's just, I mean, I said this the other day in a meeting that you were in with me, but like, Jasper Paul I'm obviously so proud of it, and I love my business. I love my team. But at the end of the day, like, all I care about are my kids and my husband and my family, and it just, I don't know, adds clarity of like what really matters in my opinion. So, but I have 2 little boys that are 2.5 and 9 months. Like, I have to go home. I can't go home with my tank on E, because then I have nothing left to give them. So like finding the balance of how I make sure that I'm not entering the house already on E is fully dependent on having a team around me that can allow me to do that. So I'm thankful. I have gratitude for them, not only for what they can execute in the business, but what they give me in my personal life too.
I think perspective is everything, and that's such a great perspective to have. Do you allow for that to permeate through your company too? So like if you have someone on your team having an off day or like having something they have to take care of personally, are you pretty lenient there?
Yeah, I mean, it's like finding the balance in that. Like, and it's hard as we grow. Like, now we're a team of 13. Like, we're in a state now where it's like, okay, we have to have procedures and protocols and things like that, where we would just kind of like handle things as they came up in the past. But yeah, we have a very like balanced, like work-life balance is very important to us. So our hours are 8:30 to 4:30 because, well, it used to be 4:30 because I like to go to a 5 o'clock workout class when I started the company, but now I want to get home to my kids. But, some people like to come in early and leave a little early, or if people are having an off day, we work from home 2 days a week. Like, our world is different now, like sitting on a desk, clocking in, clocking out, like it just doesn't operate that way. Your kid's sick, you need to go pick up your kid from school, of course, like go pick up your kid. If that means you have to get online at night for an hour, okay. Like, we have we have an expectation of the quality of work that we give to clients. And as long as we're meeting those expectations, like, that's all I ask.
And just for the record, I was not implying that you let people or you have team members, work an hour a day. What I was really trying to get at was whether or not, and you answered it, was whether or not you have people pulling all-nighters. And if that's, Caiti at work is very different than Caiti not at work. But it sounds like it's all the same and it's very consistent.
Yeah, I mean, there of course are times that we're like hustling. One of my team members and people, like, everyone that works for us cares so much about their work so that sometimes I have to be like, go home. Like, this can wait till tomorrow. But when you want to just like show up and do good work, like sometimes it's hard to turn off. And I think that's something I've learned over time. Like, and I have this conversation with my team all the time. Like, I think the height of my anxiety and stress in my career were when I just was putting an exorbitant amount of pressure on myself. It wasn't even like the job was warranting it. I was just so like, in it. So sometimes I have to be like, I know how you feel. Everyone has a level of perfectionism that works for me. I have it too. And again, it is that expectation of delivering a quality of work, but not to the point where we're like causing harm to ourselves, and that we're so stressed that we then can't do our job. So it's like, I find a lot of times I'm like trying to help people navigate how they find that balance and like be kind to themselves.
You mentioned good work a couple of times. Can you go through what it looks like if somebody were to work with your firm in terms of what you're trying to achieve for them, or is it all on them to figure out what they want to achieve and then you kind of put it together for them? And then also, a couple of times you mentioned before, and I don't even remember what the context was, but you mentioned listicles, and that being something super popular. And when you mentioned that, it clicked for me like, hey, that's all the content I see online. So do you have any other kind of go-to, and I'm not saying that's your go-to, but do you have go-tos that you may recommend to clients in every scenario, or is it just every scenario is different and you use different tools out of your toolbox?
I don't recycle ideas. Like, that's a big thing for us and that gets harder as we grow, obviously, and work with more people that are doing somewhat similar things. But, we really try to like bring unique marketing ideas to our clients. We work off of yearly strategic plans for a majority of our clients. And those take us hours and hours and edits. And so, we are really trying to offer up unique ideas to our clients, and everyone's different. And we're trying to base anything that is PR marketing focused on their business goals. So clients that can come to us and have really clear direction of, hey, for the year, we want to see X increase in revenue, or we want to see X increase in guest count, or we want to, double our private event business, or we want to launch a happy hour, whatever it is. Like anybody that has that clear direction, it's super helpful. And on like more of the media relations side of things, a lot of times we'll secure things based off of what other clients see from their peers. Like, hey, I really admire X chef in San Francisco. Well, we'll go and see like what kind of coverage has that chef gotten and who are they talking to? And if they had a article with X reporter from Food and Wine, we may pitch that person because we know there's synergies between the two and that they may have interest in our client here in St. Louis. So the cool thing about St. Louis is that there's a lot of representation in these bigger markets from San Francisco, New York, Chicago, whatever. So when we can pitch a story from St. Louis and say, hey, there's this chef doing really cool things, and guess what? He's in St. Louis, not Chicago, New York, whatever. It kind of piques people's interest. So we almost do have a leg up by being able to be St. Louis or even Midwest focused, because it is an underrepresented part of the country on a national scale. So it's just getting people here. So that's what we'll do a lot of times too, is like we're talking to a writer right now from a national publication that he's like, I haven't been to St. Louis in years. So like when he comes here, like we're going to take him around town. But that's going to be clients that we think are of interest, but also it might be giving him suggestions of places that aren't clients. Like our job is not only to serve the client, but also be a trusted source for that journalist. So like I tell my team a lot, like think like a journalist. So, they may say like, oh, I want to go to this, and this client. Like we always present all of our clients as options and then like let them make the editorial decision as a reporter. And they may say, oh, I love these two. Do you know anybody that also, I don't know, does Korean street food or something? We may not have a client that does that, but we, again, since we're focused in the industry, we know the industry, we may have a suggestion for them of somebody else that maybe isn't even a client, but helps them round out a story and helps our other clients get mentions. So
because I guess I'm not in your world, I had no clue that's kind of the way it works. If you can position yourself to be a trusted resource, why wouldn't they come to you? It makes so much sense. What are some of the top things you're seeing right now in the PR world, maybe some of the marketing world, for what maybe someone that's not your client can try to do themselves to put their story out there, put their brand out there?
I mean, I think social media has changed the game. You can kind of operate as your own publicist a little bit in that regard. Like find journalists that are, writing about your industry. They're probably on Twitter. They're X, I guess. They're probably on Instagram. Follow them, comment, you can engage with them yourself just through social media, which that's totally changed the game. And it's all about relationship building. And things change, journalists that one writer, it's like, I worked years and years to get in with this publication, finally got in with the restaurant editor. And then like 2 years later, he, moved on. And I'm like, ugh. And that happens all the time. There's turnover. Like I've been doing this for almost 20 years at this point, but like the people change. So just like knowing who's writing about your industry, if public relations is something, like media relations is something you want to explore, is really important. Like knowing who those people are and having a relationship with them. And then I think knowing what your story is and knowing what your unique angles are. So I think a lot of times people will be like, hey, I would love to see this story in X publication, or I would love to I want to get press on this. And I'm like, that's not a unique story. Not client, like this is like usually just like one-off conversations with people, but you have to find that unique angle. Like, so, what is something about your story that either other people aren't doing or is relevant for what's happening in today's world, or can you position yourself as an expert? That's something like I would advise if you know like certain changes are going to be happening in your industry, like that can be a way for you to get press. So if you know, I don't know, there's legislation being passed on how apartments can be, so I don't know, I'm making I'm not knowing them better.
Good guess.
Yeah. But do you say, hey, like I'm available if you need anybody to give you kind of expert commentary of what this means for our industry. Like I could be a voice for you. Like that's another way, instead of just like a publicist saying, hey, write this feature piece on a client, that you can position them for kind of expert commentary type stuff.
That honestly has worked for me before. Just getting to know reporters, and they know what I do, and once they have a need for me, they'll reach out. So that's worked on my end. Do you think everyone needs PR?
No.
Okay. Easy enough. So like as a customer, okay, if I see two restaurants, the food's the same. If I know this restaurant story, and I'll say restaurant A in case it's audio only for someone. Restaurant A, I know their story. I saw them in the news. Restaurant B, don't know anything about them. Food's the exact same. Mentally, I'm probably going to say restaurant A is better. And I don't even know why. And it's probably because knowing the story. So in that scenario, would you still say restaurant B doesn't need PR? It's still...
I don't know if it's like that. Apples and
okay,
like
it's a lot more nuanced.
Yeah, and I mean, it depends on budget. It depends on and that's what's hard about PR. Like a lot of times the people that get PR have the budget for it, you know. So it is this where there's maybe smaller establishments that have really cool stories that just can't afford it right now, and it is what it is. But like, I think journalists are also really good about like, okay, yes, I'm going to like take the information that's given to me, but I'm also going to, look if there's other options of things that fit into whatever story I'm writing. So a journalist isn't going to just like copy and paste what a PR firm gives them. They're going to like do their own due diligence on their end of like what fits like their editorial needs and preferences. So there's only so much we can do in that respect. Like, we'll get that sometimes where somebody will say, hey, I'm writing a story on, 5 restaurants to try in St. Louis. I'm just making this up. We'll send them great, angles for each of our clients, and they'll pick ones for certain reasons, So it's it's not so much like this one's better, if that makes sense. Like I don't think it's one's better than the other. It's all like what is the things that get PR are people that are doing things that are interesting enough to get the community excited. So we're working with people that are going to do that. So, I mean, there's people I've said no to within the hospitality industry that I'm like, I just don't know if we would like add enough value for you, because you're doing like super straightforward things that work, but it's just like, I don't know if you're going to, be at that point that you're going to be in food and wine. And if that's your goal, is to be in food and wine, I'm not going to tell you you're going to be in that publication when I don't know if we could be the partner to get you there.
You mentioned getting the community excited. I'm assuming in your world that's what you call community engagement. So community engagement, is that like referring to customers as the community? Is that like the media world, or what is the community there exactly? And what kind of engagement are you talking about? Are you talking about social media likes, or what's the overall plan? When
I think of community engagement, so we kind of operate, our strategic plans are based off of press releases, which are going to be, and again, press releases are kind of, St. Louis is very much still a market that responds to press releases, but on a national level, I wouldn't send a press release anymore. It's just like kind of an archaic form of PR, but that would be like big news. Like you just opened a new establishment, whatever. And then pitches, which I've referred to, is more of that storytelling piece. So, and that can be something tied into something that's trending, something that's, historic, maybe that is that kind of feature pitch. And then we have a section of our strategic plans that's programmatic. So that can be everything from a one-off event, that can be launching, a seasonal program, that can be a charity partnership, that can be a collaboration between two chefs, that can be a collaboration with one of our restaurants and a fitness partner. I like to think of programming and that community engagement of like food and hospitality is part of a broader lifestyle category. So we look for ways that like we're integrating our clients with that larger lifestyle category, whether that's, like I said, fitness, or whether that's sports, or whether that's the business community, it can be anything that, like, whatever the goal of the client is we consider that community engagement. But we'll activate that in a number of different ways, from events to influencer outreach. We do a ton of influencer outreach. So, that's having people come in and experience something of our clients and posting about it to their networks, and then like the charity partnerships and things like that.
I appreciate you explaining that. A lot of good tips there, I think, that even we can use in our space. I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah.
So we like to end each show with what we call a hole-in-one.
Okay.
It's your greatest piece of advice that someone can implement in their business or personal life. It could be either today. So something that they can do starting today.
I can only think of this because I just wrote it with our 7-year anniversary, but I think something I've noticed recently is you can strive for excellence without being a perfectionist. And that's something I've had to give up. The goal is excellence, not perfectionism. And once you can realize that mistakes that you make along the way and things that you can learn with grace, and knowing that those are just going to make you better and stronger, that helps ease my anxiety and stress around the work and life, really, in general. I'm not going to be 100% as a business owner, a mom, and a friend, and a sister and a daughter at all times. It's physically impossible. So just trying to be really good at those things and not being perfect. That would be my advice.
I love that.
Is that advice?
I love it. And I can really resonate with that, if you will. I think that's great for delegation and great for starting on things that maybe you're procrastinating on, which I think most people in one way or another usually have something in their life they're putting off. So great piece of advice. I think you delivered.
Okay. And if I could give one piece of PR advice, that would be sit down, write down your story, and really then read it and ask yourself, is this different than anything you've read before? And if it's not, find just keep digging of what are those things that you are doing that are different than other people.
Thanks for that piece of advice too. I think that's excellent and something most businesses can implement, I think, immediately. A lot of companies have unique stories but don't know how to tell them. So appreciate your time, Caiti.
Yeah.
We've been talking for, I think, about an hour. And it didn't feel that way.
No, yeah.
Where can people learn more about either yourself or Jasper Paul?
JasperPaulPR.com, or the same. Our Instagram's the same. Or probably mostly active on Instagram. And one of my goals of this year is to try to share more of those tip oriented stuff. So through videos and things. So trends for 2024, that kind of stuff. So hold me accountable, and hopefully that'll be on there by the time this comes out. But it was great talking to you and appreciate you. And I will say, going into 2024, one of my mantras of the year, something that you said to me, and you said to me that you are empathetic and assertive at the same time. And I think that is a really good reminder for myself of that's how I lead and that's how I make an impact on my team. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. and thanks for your time again.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
Of course.